Hey Steelers, Syndicate, it's Joe Rockey coming back at you again here. The Monday of draft week. I mean, guys, we finally made it to here. Feels like there's been so much stuff going on. And in this episode, I want to particularly focus upon what the Steelers have done that we know of, obviously, in this draft process, who they might be tipping their hats at here, because I've been sharing a lot about what I want them to do. And there's some pretty good evidence that what I want may not exactly line up with what happens on draft night. Also, not to mention the fact that there's 32 other teams that are potential variables that can mess with this plan, you know? So when we look at what the Steelers have done, there's a lot of websites going out there going off of the fact that there's three main criteria that can be recorded. There's the Senior Bowl, there's the Proday visit, and then there's the Combine visit. And what a lot of people are trying to speculate is if the Steelers have done all three, then boom, that's like a slam dunk to the ground draft pick. Not really. Not even necessarily historically. With Tomlin, the thing that indicates the most does tend to be the actual pro day, but it's also not exactly a direct indicator. You know, when he goes to a big program, Georgia, Ohio State, Bama, there's like 13 kids he's looking at because it's Bama. So pinpointing who it was is hard. And we go directly to last year. He went to Georgia. And there was all kinds of speculation that this meant that we were going to trade up to get the defensive tackle who ultimately went to the Eagles last year, because he took both him and George Pickens to dinner, as well as all the other Georgian Pro Bowl players, or correction, ones that were entering the draft. The thing is, he kind of does that with everyone. It's kind of the Steeler way. He wants to get an intimate connection with as many players as he can. It's really what you want. Essentially, he's hiring someone for an ideal decade-long relationship. He wants to be able to create a connection, knows that he can rely upon this young person, and then make him an NFL star for the next decade wearing the black and gold. That's Tomlin's goal. That is a smart goal that the Steelers have the benefit of that most teams don't. See, most teams, like Miami, for example, are just living to grasp to hold on to this second. Because if we fail, my entire career as a coach is over and it's all gone. That's not building dynasties and long-term relationships. That's pulling strings and grasping at straws to try to live here today. We are not that. We are the Pittsburgh Steelers. We have a legacy of consistency. And yes, there's people out there who are upset about that. The consistency of being in the mix but not winning it. Well, guess what? It's a lot better than being horrible for 10 years and then getting one shot of fame and disappearing again. That's not awesome. I mean, do you really want to be a Jacksonville Jaguars fan? How many people do you know that want to be that? So with that being said, the Tomlin way is incredibly vital and incredibly powerful to look at. So where I want to throw the critique at the website is saying is that the pro day is the most important, not necessarily having the Senior Bowl, Combine visit, and Pro Bowl. All three, while are a strong indicator he definitely cares about the person, they've piqued the interest, it's not the trifecta that's most important. Really, what's most important, as I said, is the pro day and the encounter we get with Tomlin. Now, there's no real way to know that, because Tomlin is not the kind of person who's going to come out and say, I was thoroughly unimpressed by someone. Because the way that the Steelers do their draft process and their scouting analysis is that they keep all the information in a vault. And then when the guy becomes a free agent 4 years down the road from now, what the Steelers do goes, this was what we recognize this kid is at this point in time entering the draft. These are what we want him to improve if he becomes a Steeler. And if he improves in these things, he will become the absolute best player he can be. And then what they'll do is they'll go to that list, then they'll go to their pro scouts and say, what has this guy done? How has he improved over the last 4 years? And at the end of the day, if he did and the results just weren't there, they chalk it up as, oh, well, that was just a wrong evaluation. And that's going to happen too. I mean, we're all people involved in this, and we're ultimately betting upon the potential of people in their mid to young 20s keeping their words and keeping working hard to make it happen, assuming, and this is a hard assumption, that the direction they're giving them is correct. And that's why the Steelers keep track of what is the direction they would have given him. Because there are plenty of players that the Steelers have brought in over the years, and these are normally players that are back end of the rosters and no one really pays attention to, but they bring them in because they feel that the kid had a strong potential, but he was taught the wrong thing or coached in a way that the Steelers would not have done it. And what they do is they bring him in, and then they give him the Steelers coaching, and they see if things can happen. You know, there's a lot of examples throughout the Tomlin era that show that. And for that reason, Tomlin does not give negative takes really on anyone, but especially on prospects, because there's no real value in it. I mean, there's no value in writing a hate essay about a player that the Browns end up taking. Yes, he might have been someone that Tomlin took off of his board for whatever reason. And yes, just because it's on NFL.com's draft list does not mean it's on Tomlin's. He has selected, they weed people out. Part of the process of what they're trying to do is to take all of the millions of candidate or potential candidates that could be involved in the NFL draft, which is any single senior who graduated from any level of college football last year, which is a lot, not just D1, but all of it, as well as all the underclassmen who have applied to enter the draft early. Tons of people. The very first thing you need to do is throw on a filter to get your search down. And that is, in some ways, as important of a process as figuring out who you want, because it's the starting point. Because we all have a finite amount of time of how can we connect to people when we are on our A game. We all know this. I mean, that's reality. So I dive into this now into the list of candidates that Tomlin has given attention to in both the Pro Day and in the Combine visit. And the reason I'm differentiating the two is throwing in the Senior Bowl aspect is contrary to Tomlin. Tomlin loves drafting underclassmen, especially early. We're talking third round and before. He loves drafting underclassmen. Well, there's a couple of obvious reasons for that. First, if you're good enough to enter the NFL early, you tend to be better than most of the seniors, or else you wouldn't be entering the NFL early if you weren't going to be a top 3 pick or a top 3 round pick. So therefore, it would make sense that you wouldn't be going to the Senior Bowl. Second, the Senior Bowl was kind of designed for players that need to have the extra exposure to get to the next level. Not saying that it, diminishes or doesn't allow big school guys to get in, but it is designed to show competition against players that you wouldn't normally have seen and give them exposure to NFL coaching. And again, just being a senior is not a plus or a minus, but it's not something the direction that Tomlin typically goes early in the draft. So I say all this to say that when we're looking at Tomlin, Pro Bowl visit, Combine visits, that's what we need to look at. So let's go through the quick list of people that have hit both of those categories. And even with this list, it's still pretty sizable. And I'm just going to go through all the names, and then we'll kind of dive into who it is that we think has a legitimate chance. Clayton Tune from the University of Houston is a quarterback. Then corners. Joey Porter Jr., Khalil Ringo, my boy Christian Gonzalez, Tyreek Stevenson, Julius Brents, sorry about that, Deontay Banks, Darius Rush. Those are what we're looking at from the cornerback status that Tomlin has had both the NFL Combine meeting and then another registered visit, mostly through Pro Days. We look at the inside linebackers. We have Trenton Simpson, and that's it. So as much as I've been going out and talking about some great guys that I'd really love him to talk to, he did not go to the Proday of Arkansas. So he didn't see Drew Sanders there, although he did have the NFL Combine visit with him. Same with Cincinnati with Pace Jr. We look at offensive linemen, and this is where really most of these people's stories are buzzing around. With the Jones from Ohio State, he saw him at the Senior Bowl, Proday, Combine visit. All of that's awesome. And that's what's leading people to believe that we stay pat at 17. Jones is the first round option based upon Tomlin's action. Then we go through the rest of the list that have Combine pre-draft meeting. John Michael Schmitz, obviously, he was at the Pro Day at Ohio State again, so that includes Paris Johnson. We have Aton Harrison from Oklahoma. And then that's it. So now we roll over to the interior defensive lineman. We got Kenyu Benton from Wisconsin, who went to all three. But again, with Brees, he only has the one encounter. When we look at the rest of the interior defensive linemen, we got Aiki from Baylor, Mozzie Smith from Big Blue up in Michigan, Dexter from Florida, and Brooks from Bowling Green. So when we look at this list, that's kind of indicating maybe we're looking second or late, the second round pick, 49 or third round or beyond at interior defensive linemen. And Tomlin isn't spending a whole lot of assets on the top ones. We see who's glaring not on that list, Jalen Carter. So my desire of trading up to get Jalen Carter because I love his tape, that's not the direction the Steelers are going. Interior defensive line is not on the board in round one based upon what we're seeing here. Okay, cool. With Brian Breesy, his is a medical decision more so than anything. You look at his tape, you know what he is. So that's an interesting thing to just note on the side there. I still think he will be an amazing guy. When we're looking at safeties, it kind of makes sense that they're not really looking at anyone. They brought back KZ. They brought in Neal, who's going to be a swing guy between safety and linebacker. So they're pretty well set in the deep center. Then obviously Minka being the top of the world up there. Myles Murphy being that the only edge rusher that we did both the Pro Day and the Combine with. So as we look at this in greater detail, it just might be something that, hey, if he's there, we'll pick him up. But it's Myles Murphy. I'm not seeing a giant need to blow out the farm to go get him. The wide receiver position as a whole doesn't have any of the both visits. So for all the people out there who are saying, we're getting a wide receiver, there's not a super indication that that's going to be a direction based upon what Tomlin has shown here. Look at running backs, same deal. And that makes a whole lot of sense. You're not bringing in another running back between the Warren and Najee committee. You are going to be really set there. Same's true with tight ends. You have a great tight end room. Again, I cannot speak highly enough of what I think Freiermuth will be, and the tight ends are set. So when we look at this list in totality, to me, there is one burning hope that lines up with the possibility of trading up and getting a stud. And that's Christian Gonzalez, cornerback from Oregon. And personal bias, full disclosure, I have always hated the Oregon Ducks. Something about them since, I don't know, I was like 12 when they came out with those chrome neon jerseys. Just something about them I couldn't stand. Maybe it was a Chip Kelly thing. I don't know. But something about the Ducks I could not handle. Chris Gonzalez has overcome that bias and beyond. That guy is a beast. And if somehow we pull a trade up and snag him, worth it. Absolutely worth it. So, Steelers Nation, I wanted to give this because, as I said, we have been in lying season here for a while. And looking at Tomlin's history and looking at what Tomlin has, this is what's been officially recorded by Tomlin. So the other caveat on this has to be noted that we're in an era where it's easier than ever to do meetings without people knowing about it. There is not a single college coach that is going to turn down a call from an NFL front office. So for Tomlin to say, hey, I want to talk to this kid, put him on a Skype, we're doing this, that is nothing, and that is happening all of the time. So the reality is this is just what's been official. There's totally potential for more understanding. But knowing how much Tomlin values relationships, he gets much more with being with people than talking to people over the internet. It's a thing with all of us, really. But Tomlin is very good at selecting the high character guys that he wants in his team. And yes, obviously, when you're in charge of bringing in 90 people to camp, there's going to be some eggs that aren't perfect, especially when you multiply over his tenure. The guy has done an amazing job in this department, and we have to give him love and credit for it. He also has never had a losing season. So we're going to dive into that with tomorrow's episode about the losing season element and what it means for the Pittsburgh Steelers moving forward here. And if you were focused upon not having a losing season, as obviously when you're winning a Super Bowl, you can't have a losing season, what is a pitfall that Tomlin might find himself in entering into the draft?